Fantastic action as usual. So Michael Christensen now in the Porsche. He's managed to sneak ahead. He's pulled out about 1.9 seconds on the cars around him, and that's helped. So Toby and Julian have headed off to go get a cup of tea. I'm now joined in the commentary box by Martin Haven and my old teammate Peter Dumbreck. Guys, what have you made of the race so far? Have you watched any of it? Have you been eating a second lunch?
Third lunch, actually. I've been sat on the top of Alan McNish's container out the back there, so we've
sounds glamorous.
We've had a very good view, and yeah, just been chilling out with a wee tin of Perrier. And so all good, yes, enjoying all the French things.
Yeah, we have to keep McNish in a container until we release him. Fantastic battle in all the classes, and as we expected, the GTs, they're really knocking each other's doors off. Look, the BMW's just gone by the Corvette. Or was that before? No, it was the BMW going by the Corvette at the tail of the field there. So that's Ollie Gavin being passed by Martin Tomczyk. Gavin had got in front of him briefly. Tomczyk reinstates the 81 BMW in front. So Porsche is starting to canter off into the distance, but behind them, it's a very tight battle.
Yeah, Alex Brundle has been in the pits and back out again. So whatever that issue was for the Ginetta, where he was going very, very slowly, they've actually managed to get him out in 1 minute and 17. So it's not actually been a long stop. Louise report. I think, Louise, you got some news on that stop, haven't you?
Yeah, Louise, you're down at Ginetta. What do you know?
They said that they don't know what happened. Something happened. They did a power surge and then it all got going again. So he just went straight back out.
All right,
that all control delete chestnut, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, it's new car problems, isn't it? It didn't race at Spa. It's done almost 0 test mileage for reasons that we don't need to go into now. But you know, this is its first sort of big shakedown, and as shakedowns go, it's a pretty tough one, isn't it? You know, it's very public.
It's quite a public shakedown, isn't it? So we're on board here. The number 82 car. We're in the Ford garage. Sebastian Bourdais sitting in the back. The number 3 Rebellion is in. So Thomas Laurent has come in, and it's a little bit early, isn't it? Lap 18, because they pitted on. Well, I suppose he got to lap 8. It was an early first stop, so yeah,
they would have come
right.
in short just to make sure that they were right on the fuel calculations, wouldn't they? Fastest first sector of the entire race by that car on his in lap. So it's not hanging around in the first bit, but it's down the straight that Rebellion has got a little bit too much speed, a little bit too much drag, and it loses out. There is a Corvette BMW battle behind a Ferrari. So that's Collado, Garcia and Sims. Collado in the red Ferrari. Antonio Garcia ahead of Alexander Sims. Louise, I was just walking into the booth and it's nice and dry where we are. You're saying it's raining in the pit lane?
Yeah, it's all of a sudden just started to rain. Again,
That's what happens with rain, isn't it?
Yeah, not too bad, but yeah, drops are definitely falling.
The pace seems okay though, isn't it? People are still popping up decent sectors, and despite the traffic, we're still seeing blue sectors. So
it's not going to affect things yet. I think it needs to be fairly heavy because the track's warm. That's the thing. The track temperature will be in the 30s probably.
Yeah, we're
it's fairly warm out there, so any rain that does fall dries fairly quickly. So it needs to get pretty heavy to start to make too much of an impression on the track.
Sure.
Down in the pits, Louise Beckett.
Yep, the number 8 car, Sebastian Buemi, the race leader, is in. So, Louise, you'll see him in a second.
I will see him in a second. And I understood it that Alonso was supposed to be getting in the car now. So, let's see. I can't see him at the moment, but maybe he'll run out at the last minute.
Well, I was going to say, he's going to have to be there pretty soon.
Yeah, definitely be there with a helmet on if he was. Doesn't look like it to me. No. So no driver change.
And so this is a triple stint then for the starting driver, Sebastian Remy.
Rear QEC change. Yeah. That's interesting, isn't it?
Now, look how different the end plates are on that wing.
I wonder if that's a bit more downforce because they expect a bit more rain.
Yeah, that could well be. So a wet rear end.
And they've managed to do it within the time of the fuel, haven't they? So it's not really cost them any time. And these cars, just for people at home to understand, they've got live telemetry data. So the engineers on the wall are getting live data coming through. And as Peter said, maybe they're expecting rain and they want more downforce, but also they may see some dropouts in terms of, you know, the level of downforce and the amount of performance that they expect to see. They've got sensors that monitor the amount of downforce, and maybe they chose to make a call. I mean, Toyota's approach this weekend is very much, let's cover all our bases. If there's any shred of a doubt of an issue, they've got a spare part there. They've got they can't afford.
It's definitely theirs to lose.
Yeah. Every year they come back and something else catches them out, and so the list of possibles that they're trying to exclude gets longer and longer. It might just be that they were feeling the car was a little loose. Very different track temperature to anything we've had in the week. You know, 30s, we've been lucky to have 13 halfway through qualifying for most of the day. So maybe they're just finding that there's not the grip. They want a little bit more. You know, the other thing about a few drops of rain, nobody panicked and pitted. You know, when it rained at the end of qualifying, it wasn't raining heavily, but the track was damp in places. But everybody sat on their thumbs and didn't go out. Here, hot track, hot tyres, you can live with a few sprinkles.
Yeah, and this is the challenge of Le Mans, and I mean, I haven't been here as many times as Peter has, but I remember coming here in 2012 and we were freezing and we were digging out spare jumpers and fleeces and all sorts. And then last year, I could not believe how hot it was. I was melting. And I come from India where it's pretty damn hot, and I was melting in the cockpit. So you just can't tell what's going to happen here with the weather.
But like everything else about this place, it's so unpredictable. Onboard view there was from the 82 BMW in our GTE Pro Class battle. That's Alexander Sims. He's in 6th place overall, chasing the yellow Corvette of Antonio Garcia. And now hoping up behind him, the world champion's car, James Collado in the 51 Ferrari right there. And as they turn into the Dunlop Bridge, right behind him is Stefan Mucker in the Ford number 66.
I tell you what, guys, the guy who's made a good little bit of progress in that group is Patrick Pilet, because he's vaguely in the shot there on the left-hand side in the white Porsche. But he was in the thick of that battle, and he sort of picked his way past Garcia, past Collado, past Mucker, and he's now put a little daylight, doesn't he? He's put a second and a half. He's broken the slipstream from Garcia. I think he's done a really good job in the second stint, because in the first stint he was in amongst all of that mess and they were banging wheels and all sorts. And there you can see now this Corvette, the Garcia versus Sims battle is still ongoing, but Pilet's managed to edge away.
Again, the BMW just using the toe to try and slingshot by into the braking area. New set of tyres going on Hulu.
Jean-Eric Byrne is in the pit, so we've got the top three from LMP2, and Jean-Eric Byrne, Nicolas Lapierre and Will Stevens. Guido van der Garde from 4th has also come in, as has Philippe Albuquerque. So this is the lap for the second round of pit stops. I wonder if we're going to see some driver changes, because they all stayed in the car. The starting drivers all stayed in the car at the first round of stops.
That's
and
a very
now
good call.
I wonder if we're going to start. If they're doing tyre changes, normally we see driver changes at the same time, isn't it? With the time involved.
That's, you know, we've seen in the past cars doing 3-4 stints on a set of tyres. So it's slightly unusual maybe that he's already changing tyres.
Well, I was talking to the BMW drivers. They're looking at single stinting the driver but double stinting the tyre, so you're going to inherit somebody else's tyres until you get into the doubles and triples in the night.
I tell you, they need to get on with it. I did a quintuple 5 stints last year, you know.
But you know, they're GT drivers, what can I tell you?
It is a bit different driving a GT. 5 stints in a GT, plus they go longer on fuel, don't they?
It's true.
Says the man who drove a lap in his race today.
Yeah, but it's not about how many laps, it's whether you win or not, and I believe I won. Yes, I won. Yes.
Very good, Peter. Very good.
Stefan Sarazan in from 3rd place in the lead non-hybrid, the number 17 SMP racing car. But the other car, Vitaly Petrov in number 11, is now plunged down to 2nd last. It's in the garage, 2 laps down, and only the very much delayed Malaysian Jackie Chan DC racing car is now behind it. They're 3 laps off the lead. In fact, they're 6 laps behind the leader, and Petrov is now 3 behind the leader.
And that's bad news for Jenson Button fans, isn't it? Jenson's not even got in the car yet. Bad news for
Jenson Button as well, isn't it? Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. You know, he's not even got in the car yet, and already they've lost a ton of time. As you say, 3 laps down now, so that's really a shame for him, really. I think he was very excited for, you know, at the prospect of his first Le Mans, and was hoping to try and get the car on the podium, but
doesn't necessarily mean he's not going to make the podium, though.
No, of course not.
Well, there is that.
Just remember
shot.
last year.
Yeah,
Just remember last year.
And everything we ever took for granted has been thrown out with the bathwater in the last couple of years, hasn't it? They're on the they've only got 1 lap to go, and yeah. So wholesale LMP2 changes now.
I don't know if Duval has had an issue with his stop, but he's had a 1:24 stop, which is 21 seconds slower than Verne, and also 15 seconds slower than Lapierre. So Duval, on our timing screen, still showing ahead of Lapierre, but a very slow pit stop for him there.
And Lloyd started that car, did he?
Yes, yeah, he started the car, and he was, you know, Jean-Eric Verne came from nowhere. The first round of stops, he had a 1:01 pit stop, and nobody else was under 1:10. I think there's one car, 1:08, and he jumped from about 8th place into the lead of P2.
And their second stop is a 1:03 in that G-Drive car, and that would have been an extra lap of fuel, don't forget, because the first one will only have used 9 laps, this will have used 10, so it'll have needed more to go in.
They've been very good on the stops. And also Jev's pace, once he got free air, his pace was exceptionally good. He was in the 29s and rattling off some quick laps.
He's like Buemi was last year, leading Formula E, leading World Endurance. You know, for most of the year, Buemi could do no wrong, and Jev's in that golden moment at the moment.
Mike Conway in the pits, so the lead Toyota. I'm interested to see what's going to happen here, because Conway had got in the lead before the first stop, and then when it all shook out after the first round pit stops, all of a sudden he was 18 seconds down. We didn't really see, he had an 8 seconds slower pit stop, and then we didn't really see any problem on the outlap.
Maybe they're establishing the fact that that team's going to be slow every time they stop.
Well, you said it, not me.
We'll find out in 23 hours where we are when there's 47 minutes left to go, and even then, again, as history teaches us, we won't know. Out comes the number 7 car. Number 8 has gone through.
There's a wheel.
That may be an error.
There's a wheel.
I'm not sure that that's normal. Definitely. Right, so now we've got a wheel. All we need now is for the cameras to find the car that's missing it.
If that's a confidential tyre, of course, that better find its way back to the pits, or else it'll be a hefty fine to pay from Michelin.
Let's play Guess the Offender. It's not Conway. Sarrazan's just gone out of the pits. So too has Van der Gaard. So has Felipe Albuquerque in the 22 United Autosports car. So is the Labra competition.
I'll tell you who it is. It's car 31, I'm going to bet, because he's going slowly, and there he is on our screen.
Right. Well, that's
Burton.
That is not an outlap. So my money was on it being a car that had just left the pits, but you're right, that is Nat Burton, and it's not an outlap.
That's such a shame for him. They were going really well. They qualified second, didn't they, in LMP2, and they were well in that lead battle at the early stage of this race. And Burton, another former teammate of mine.
Well, the good news is, though, within a minute of us seeing Marshall picking up a tyre, we see the car in the Porsche curves. So he didn't lose it on the Mulsanne. It's not far back to home, so hopefully the car gets back in one piece. And it looked like it was a right front.
You're right about your assumption that there's a car leaving the pits, though. It's perfectly normal that if one wheel didn't go on properly, it would. But yeah, to have done 3 laps of a stint and then for it to come off, that'd be very rare.
I did suggest that the crew of the blue and white Rothmans coloured Porsche ought to be careful, because in the Group C era they had a real habit of throwing off front wheels in races. So we'll wait to see whether that follows them with that distinctive livery.
We've got a real ding-dong battle with the Ford, not the Fords, the GTs in general, but the Fords are in there, of course. And it's great now that we've pretty much got all the manufacturers there, bar one, which is the obvious exception, Aston Martin. It's a shame they're not quite there. Obviously, their BOP change wasn't quite enough for them to bring them up there, but hopefully as the race goes on, perhaps they'll find their way up.
Well,
the lead, Peter, as you said, only 0.6 of a second. There is the wheel coming off at the exit of Indianapolis. So Burton, quite lucky, it didn't happen at the previous right-hander, because that would have been a real problem.
Do you know what? It came off when it was in the left, when the wheel is free to travel. I bet he had a huge moment turning into the right-hander.
Yeah, so he's in here, the front right, crawling down the pit lane. We see him on our screens there.
Yeah.
But Peter, just going back to your point about GTE Pro, 7/10 the gap between the lead Ford and the lead Porsche.
So clearly the BOP for these guys is pretty much spot on at the moment.
Yeah.
They've got a Corvette up there, you've got the Porsches, even a BMW. I mean, you think where BMW was earlier this week and how they've gradually fought their way up, obviously fine-tuning the car.
Yeah.
And they're on the pace and definitely in the fight there.
It ain't about qualifying. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then we've got a massive battle for 5th position, which is Patrick Pilet. He's a third of a second ahead of Stefan Mucker's Ford. He's 9/10 ahead of Garcia's Corvette. He is 7/10 ahead of Colado's Ferrari. He is 4/10 ahead of Ryan Briscoe, who's 3/10 ahead of Andy Prio in their Fords. Then 6/10 back is Martin Tomczyk's BMW, and then a full second behind him, Ollie Gavin. So from 4th place down to 12th place, they are covered by about 7 seconds.
Yeah.
That's this long queue of cars.
That's phenomenal. That's fantastic to see.
Yeah, and that's the Ford Porsche. Is that Muller ahead of Christensen? No, that's Mucker ahead of Pilet.
At the moment, I've got McNish ahead of me, so I can't see anything.
So Sims has just dropped out. With the green, that's Stefan Mucker. He's now in 5th ahead of Patrick Pilet. And Pilet, we're on board with Pilet in the 93 Porsche, one of the 2 IMSA cars. We won't see them for the rest of the World Endurance season. And straight on the chicane. Is he fresh out of the pits, the 33 car? No. That's David Chang just carrying a little ambition and too much speed in. Well, Lena Gage currently on Radio Le Mans commentary, and her driver for many years, Alan McNish, her driver, look at that. Alan McNish has joined us. Alan, every year you think it can't be any madder than last year at the start, and every year they prove us wrong. It's just been mental.
Yeah, it certainly was from the start with the LMP1 with Andre Lotterer. Just running it a little bit too far round the outside at the first corner and tagging the Dragon Speed car. But this GTE battle, this was very, very different in qualifying. They did a BOP change on Friday night, very late Friday night. A bit of weight and a bit of turbo boost for different cars. And I have to say, I think they're pretty much in there. The only car that's still struggling a little bit is the Aston Martin, which is very new in its development stages. But the BMWs especially are much more in the game than I expected. The first one with Alexander Sims being in 4th place there. The thing that's confused me about this one is if I take the 66 Ford, it was the leading Ford in qualifying, but it dropped back and then it suddenly started to come forward again, and for no real particular reason. But the good thing is they seem to be able to overtake. Actually, all of the cars in this battle seem to be able to overtake.
The toe is working on the straights, and no one is extra quick, and therefore any car can tow up behind another one and have a proper go at them.
But this is the battle, isn't it, now with the Porsche? That's basically, it's the car that led right from the start. Its sister cars dropped back a little bit in 3rd place, but this is a really, really strong battle. And I actually, to be honest with you, I think we're going to be talking about this one all through the night and into tomorrow morning, you know, bar incidents or anything.
Well, I think about last year and the GT battle last year and how one by one they eliminated themselves from various things, pit stop errors or shunts on track, spins, whatever. And it just came down to, in the end, Corvette and Aston Martin. But, you know, at this stage of the race last year, we also had a very tight battle and no one could call it.
Well, the thing of it is, you know, this is hard to sustain in a 2-hour 45 American Le Mans Series race. For a 24-hour race, this pressure will cost people a chance. You know, cars will break or drivers will hit things. You'll get caught in traffic. You'll get caught in somebody else's accident. But, you know, the early stages here show us, as Alan said, the balance of performance where they try and make sure that very different cars are about as level as they can be, and then let the drivers and the engineers make the difference. It's working well. You know, as you say, Aston Martin not in the mix, but everybody else has got a shot. Here comes Jean-Eric Verne in the G-Drive car, number 26. That is the race leader in LMP2. And once they go onto the straight,
Ford's trying to use the toe to go by.
Yeah.
Is it going to work?
No, he's too far away at the moment. Now the Ferrari's defending.
And the question is the Ferrari going to be able to run as deep in under braking as he wants? He is. 51 Ferrari there, of course, a car of James Collado.
So Prio and Briscoe, the 2 Fords behind, they've swapped position again. They've done that 2 or 3 times now.
67, the Andy Priaulx car we're on board with now, that was the one that had so many offs in qualifying. Hopefully they won't replicate those in the race. There he is, the pulling out of the slipstream of the Ferrari of James Collado. Priaulx's down the inside, and neatly done. Now he toes past into the chicane. Can his teammate Ryan Briscoe do the same in the yellow mirrored car?
Well, when you say teammate, it's kind of teammate. They're under the same banner of Ford Chip Ganassi Racing, but one of them is from the European World Endurance Championship crew based out of, well, very near Silverstone, and the other one is actually the US IMSA crew as he's getting squeezed into the barrier up over the hump at Mulsanne. He's on the inside line here, but that's a really tricky place to try and brake and overtake.
Two wheels down the hard shoulder.
If he had stuck it down the inside there, then only one of them would have came out the corner. That was fact. I don't know which one, but only one of them would have came out of the corner.
Well, possibly neither. We saw a couple of big shunts in the Road to Le Mans race when drivers dropped a wheel off onto that sort of side element for parking up damaged cars on the normal road, because there's a step down to it. Not a big one, but enough just to unbalance a car. You know, and the grip level is very, very low because it's mucky and gritty and sandy, and it's the equivalent of putting a wheel on the grass, which racing drivers really try and avoid.
Yeah, but the other factor about it is you get little sharp stones in there, and the sweepers sweep everything away, so you can get punctures. Again, Briscoe looking to the outside, the Ferrari squeezing up, and the BMW locked up close to tapping him. So the BMW, who's behind him, because he could be vulnerable now coming down into Porsche.
That is Martin Tomczyk in the 81 BMW behind Ryan Briscoe.
See there, the BMW just got caught. What happens is that coming into there, your brakes are very hot because you've had a very, very heavy braking in towards the right and left of Indy, and your front brakes especially are very hot and up at the upper end of the temperature window. And then after that, you lose a little bit of the front downforce, and then hence the stopping capability when you're so close to the car ahead. Locked up the wheel. That was quite close to a Ford tapping a Ferrari, but then a BMW tapping the Ford.
Now through comes the second of the Toyotas. And sweeping by Mike Conway. Louise Beckett with news from the pits of one of the halt in the lane returning to the circuit. Who's gone back out?
The number 31 with Roberto Gonzalez has gone out. I've tried to speak to Bertrand, but he's not in the mood just at the moment, so I will return shortly.
Yeah, we'll probably need to beep less of it in a few minutes, won't we? Thank you, Louise Beckett. Well, there's, of course, a team watching the action. Amato Ferrari's crew, hugely experienced, won last year's GTE World Championship title. And the two cars, the sister car of Sam Bird, the 71 car, down out at the tail of the field. He's actually 5 seconds behind Romain Dumas in the 94 Porsche. That's the closest car to him. And Sam is ahead of the two Aston Martins by over a minute, with an hour and 24 minutes down in the race. That's really not good news for Aston Martin.
You know, just observing some of the cars through the corners there. Obviously, they're pushing very hard. There's a major battle going on here in GT Pro, and we've got, is that the Ford of Priaulx trying to pass Garcia? But they're definitely using a little bit more track than they should do. Like, well, actually, there's not a problem, but yeah, so, some of the corners, they're going over that white line, and I haven't seen many warnings yet.
Well, yeah, there are normally a couple of key ones, and the first really fast left in the Porsche curves, if you blatantly abuse that, you will get warned for it. Most of the others, I think, relatively fair game.
I'm just thinking Tête Rouge, though. They were definitely over the line, both of them, and so far so good.
Tête Rouge and karting are the two where you can gain a lot of lap time because of the fact there's a big straight afterwards, and you gain and keep momentum all the way through the corner.
2k an hour.
Dumas got a black and white warning flag for the constant abuse of the track limits about 20-25 minutes ago that I noticed, but that's the only one that I've seen. It's not like in qualifying where they were going on about it quite often. Down into Mulsanne now, though. Corvette, and then Priaulx behind. 63 Corvette, Andy Garcia. Antonio Garcia, actually, sorry, not the actor. He's the racing driver that's in this one.
Jean-Eric Verne jumping his way up the order as the Ford guys are getting ready for a pit stop. They think, all right,
A little bit of Pilates there.
Really, do they need to? Yes, they do need to, because they are as physically active as the drivers, and they don't have a massage after every time they've done a pit stop. They need to keep themselves really ready to go.
Yeah, if you think of a wheel and tyre, then in an LMP1 car, they're about maybe 18 kilograms in total. And so in a GTE car, they're a little bit less than that. But if you're trying to pick that up, so you grab up sort of 15 kilograms in one hand and then throw it out, locate it onto the wheel hub and then onto the exact splines. You know, you do need a bit of force and a bit of capability. Hence, you need to have your...
All right, so end of Tomczyk's stint, he's handing over to Philip Eng, so he's complaining about the balance of the car. Again, track temperature changing a little bit now, it's got a little bit more overcast, so it's starting to, you know, it's like you've seen in NASCAR so often, chasing the weather, and as the temperature changes, you can make a tyre pressure adjustment to try and get you back to the sweet spot where you want to be.
Yeah, I think Martin Tomczyk there, he would have been briefed, maybe even before the race. Just, you know, at this stage of the race, we want to know how things are with the car and how it is on the tyres, because they're not quite sure. Qualifying, of course, was quite wet for some of it. So
it was 2 days ago.
It was 2 days ago, and the track hasn't. Well, it's had other cars on it, other championships running, but it's not the same.
So it's hotter, it's more rubbered in, and the other thing is they've been running without any safety car or major slow zones for 90 minutes. We didn't have that at any stage in qualifying.
Yeah, I think at the end as well, they're just trying to maximise what they have in tyre pressures, and especially the rear tyre pressures at this stage of the race, because you tend to find that actually it's your rear tyre pressures that are a little bit higher than you want, and here there is a very, very fine balance between the low speed and stability of the tyre, so you want low pressure for that, just to give the traction out of it, but then you need the high speed stiffness of the tyre as well, so you can't really go below normally about 1.8 bar, 1.85 bar. Where maybe in another circuit, like Silverstone, for example, you could be at 1.75. It doesn't seem very much, but in the car and for the balance of the drivers, a huge amount. And here's 67 overtaking. So it looks like Prio could have got it done going down towards the first chicane. Oh,
only just,
leaning a little on Garcia just to try and make sure that there's room to get through. So again, the Ford slipstreams up behind the Corvette. This is America's sports car versus Ford's Halo sports car. Ford Chevy, it's a classic in any environment. You think of Bathurst, Ford versus Holden, that's a GM product. And NASCAR Ford versus Chevrolet has been one of the mainstays of NASCAR racing since the 1950s. The Corvette right behind, looking to try and find a way back past Prio. Just didn't have enough straight line speed. And the other Ford, the 69 car, right behind with the yellow mirrors, that's Ryan Briscoe, the Kiwi. Now the only car that has had a problem that hasn't returned to the track is SMP Racing's number 11 car, slow Ferrari, and it's a left rear puncture. And is that James Collado? It must be James Collado, or is it Sam? Oh, it's James Collado, 51 car.
He's 13th at the moment and dropping now as Collado. Left rear, that tyre, he's got to be careful. Hopefully from his point of view it actually just comes off completely and leaves the wheel rim as he's down into the second chicane, so he's got another, well, 8.5 kilometers to go before he can get back to the pits. You see him there just coming through the, instead of going through the chicane, actually just going through the escape road.
And of course that's the other danger of using that extra track, because it's dirty, it's gritty out there. So it's possible that he got the puncture running out wide off track slightly.
P1 pit stop for Ben Hanley in the number 10 Dragon Speed car, meanwhile. Well, you get your wish, or at least Collado probably gets his wish.
Right, it's most of it. I don't think that's the actual whole top of the tyre as well. So that's the whole tread pattern that would normally touch the road. The sidewalls, I would presume, are still on the rim itself.
Now, on a road car, it's only held on by the air pressure of the tyre, but here they're also fixed to the rim. Black and white flag for car number 52 for constant abuse of the track limits. That's Tony Wielander's AF Corsa number 52 car. And our leaders are still the Toyotas, 1-2, number 8 ahead of number 7. SMP's number 17 car, the best of the non-hybrid cars, ahead of Rebellion's number 3. The Dragon Speed number 10, which has just stopped Ben Hanley, staying in, ahead of Andre Lotterer. G-Drive, TDS and Seniortech Alpine, the regular front runners in LMP2, ahead of Panis Barthez, Graf and Racing Team Netherlands. And our pole sitters IDEX Sport down in 8th place. A couple of cars out of position. The number 4 by Collers, the number 6 Ginetta of Alex Brundle, and the number 5 Ginetta of Mike Simpson, just ahead of the epic GT battle. Michael Christensen still hanging on ahead of his teammate, and then the Fords and the Corvettes and the other Porsches knocking each other's door mirrors off. AF Corsa 51 car heading to the pit lane. Spirit of Race Ferrari is the GTE AM leader. From the 88 Dempsey Proton Porsche and the Clearwater for Racing Ferrari ahead of JMW in 4th place. Now, the Porsches were the strong cars in qualifying in GTE AM, but Alan, in the race, the Ferraris seem to be popping right up to the top of the field.
Yeah, but Ferraris this morning in warm-up were 2nd, 3rd and 4th, and they seem to be there en masse, and when that happens, then usually it suggests to me that they were maybe a little bit in their pocket. At the same time, remember, there was a balance of performance change, only a small amount, but it seems to have, I would have said, pulled everything together. We've got a cracking battle once again in GTE Pro. A really good one in the other categories, but that's one that I think is going to rage as very, very close all the way through.
And in the middle is the 38 Jackie Chan DC Racing car. Just gone out of shot is the 3rd place Rebellion of Thomas Laurent, and behind him is the SMP car of Stefan Sarazan. That's the chrome blue at the front. Now, the number 11 car, their sister LMP1 car, the other BR Engineering stroke Dallara car, is still in the pits, and Louise has told us that they've got electronic problems with that car.
Yeah, that's usually a pretty bad sign, because often they're very difficult to be able to assess and understand what the electronic problem is, and if it is in the wiring loom itself, then that's just stripping the whole car apart, which you cannot do. There's certain things that you can do within this race and replace, and there's certain things that you can't.
Yeah, the problem with electricity is it's hard to see where it's leaking. Oil and water, generally you can follow the leak, same with fuel, but electricity, if there's a break inside the insulation, you'll almost never find it.
Yeah, but I'll tell you one thing, the SMP car, even though it didn't do very much running in Spa, and it had its incidents there, it's been actually very competitive here, much more than I thought it was in comparison to the Rebellions. The Rebellions, I think, are still over the course of a race distance purely because they know the car and they've run 24-hour races a lot more, and they've finished on the overall podium here. I think they'll be the biggest challengers to Toyota, but the SMP, the BR01, has been definitely quicker than I thought it was going to be, which is, you know, hats off to them.
It's an interesting combination because it's called SMP Racing, but like Red Bull, that's the sponsor's name. The chassis is called the BR Engineering, but it's engineered and designed by Dallara, or built by Dallara. And the team is run by ART, who are a well-known single-seater team, but have got very limited sports car racing, endurance racing experience. So it's very much a new program. As you say, Rebellion raced in P2, raced in P1 with their own chassis, then in P2 again, now back to P1. So they know all about endurance racing. And 2 wheels off there from the young hot shoe Thomas Laurent, as he carves his way through this GT battle between the Corvettes of Ollie Gavin and in front of him Antonio Garcia. Stop and go for the Ginetta number 6 car, Alex Brundle.
Spinning wheels. Basically, when you leave the pits, you're not allowed to spin the wheels, and this is a safety item due to the fact there's so many people in that pit lane. Another view of threading down the hill. I tell you, that's a place that I can tell you from personal experience, you can't always see where the cars are around and about you, and 2 doesn't go into 1 there, and if it doesn't go into 1, it can end up in a huge accident.
And that's how the Rebellion got in front of the SMP car, because the SMP car came over the rise trying to go around the outside. All the slow traffic moved out and the Rebellion slotted down the inside. Into the pit lane comes our GT battle. In fact, almost everybody. The race leader, Michael Christensen, in the 92 Porsche. Louise Beckett, Gertja Loyns, Andy Prios in, Ryan Briscoe's in, Ollie Gavin in, Martin Tomczyk in, Tony Wielander in.
New tyres there and driver changes. As one threads out and the other one threads in. But Yeah, the UK Fords are in where it's the American-based cars. Even though it's under the one name, then you've got that split separation. They've stayed out there.
Driver changes. Martin Tomczyk gets out after a double stint to start in the BMW. That's the 81 car. Now, the other half of the field is going round again. You know, Ford with 4 cars, 2 Porsche teams with a pair each. You've got to split your strategies a little, otherwise you end up with this massive traffic jam of your own making. Crikey.
What a move.
Well, that's where one of the Porsches lost it on Thursday night by getting out to where the Ferrari got to and then looped it right-hand side. And you can see everything squeezing in, and there's a bit of a bump to 69. This is quite early on, actually. This is a replay from early on. Yeah. And the 69 just sort of squeezes back to try to get his line, so he's not compromised coming out of here. And there was a BMW in the way, but nothing too dramatic happened.
Shouldered him out of the way, and this is the battle for the lead of the AM class. Spirit of Race is 54, Dempsey Proton 88, Porsche, Matteo Cairoli battling with Giancarlo Fisichella. Yeah, Giancarlo, one of the sort of early ex-Formula 1 drivers who came into this endurance racing business with Ferrari. Lawrence Vantor taking over the 92 Porsche, Tony Kanaan in 67. Richard Westbrook in 69, those are the 2 Ford changes. And Tommy Milner took over from Ollie Gavin in 64, the Corvette, and Philip Eng took over the 81 BMW. Well, Jimmy Bruni, Louise points out, has stayed in from the start, and everybody else just about has changed. Dirk Muller, the leader in GT in 68. Alex Sims here in 3rd place, being chased by Stefan Mucker.
There's 2 options you can do. You can either try to cycle your drivers through so they get a feel for what the car and what the track is like very early on. And the other option is to keep a driver in for a period of time, and then it could be a triple stint as they have now on the tyre, and change the driver with the tyre. Personally, that's the way I prefer it. If you've got a good, strong driver lineup, I would prefer it to have 3. You do your triple stint, the driver stays with the tyre, he knows the degradation of the tyre all the way through. He also knows the increasing grip of the track and the change of grip of the track. And then it goes to the next driver, reset, go again. If you do it where they change the driver and having to keep the tyre on, then the first out lap with that driver with someone else's tyre, you can lose a little bit of lap time there. And in a battle as close as it is right now in this GTE Pro, and the chances that it's going to, as it did last year, go to the checkered flag in the last lap, then I don't think I would be wanting to give away any lap time by any driver just having to get up to speed.
Alexander Sims in the BMW just ahead of the Ferrari, of the Ford with the green mirrors. They both come into the pit lane, and Sims has just picked up a warning for constant abuse of track limits and skates over the curbs, drifts it into the pit lane. So the 68 Ford leads with Dirk Muller now. Now he's gone a lap longer than any of the other 3. Oh no, he's in. So Dirk Muller is in, Jimmy Bruni's in from 2nd in the 91 Porsche. Alexander Sims in from 3rd, Stefan Mucker from 4th, Patrick Pilet from 5th, and Antonio Garcia from 6th. So that's the other half of the field. And the 51 Ferrari has gone back out. Where is it? After that puncture, it's 3rd from last. So Vitaly Petrov's number 11 SMP racing car still hasn't moved. Jackie Chan DC Racing are 6 laps behind in 59th place. I'm afraid Alessandro Pierguidi taking over from James Collado, his teammate, the world champions in the 51A, of course, a Ferrari. They're 58th out of a field of 60. Luckily for them, there are 2 Le Mans 24 Hours in this year's Super Season Championship, so they will need to get the points from next year's.
Yeah, when you say that something's not happening and you're quite surprised when one pops up, then they're like buses in that respect, and black and white flags at the moment are exactly like buses, because now we've got Maki Ovecki having just been pinged for that. We've also had Dumas, Sims and Villander in the last 4 laps. So now the race direction are saying, right guys, look, you've had enough time to work out where the track limits are, and I think they're just putting down the letter of the law.
I think at some stage we might hear a radio communication from the team to one of the cars saying, guys, you've got to calm down a bit, you know, it's getting a bit too close now, otherwise we'll get a penalty, we're going to have to stop and go, and that's going to really hamper you in a race this close.
And the warning doesn't just come up on our timing screen and on your TV monitors, it also comes up in the driver's cockpit to the individual driver in the individual car in question, and it will tell him that they are being penalised for track limits at a certain corner, so there's no excuses. Louise is down in the pit lane with James Collado from AF Corsa, the world champion, picking up that puncture, Lou.
Yeah, the 51's come in and gone back out. James, we saw the puncture. What happened?
Yeah, unfortunately, a sudden rear left puncture. Not good because it happened in the first sector, but yeah, I managed to get it back to the pit lane without any damage, and yeah, we'll see what we can do from here.
Thank you.
Thanks, Lou. Thanks, James. Well, trouble for them. Trouble also for one of our fancied front runners in the AM class, as you saw during that interview. Michael Wainwright looping it round out of the fast right in Indianapolis and into the left. It looked as though he got it stopped, or it stopped itself without hitting anything significant, but that might well have done that set of tyres.
Well, done the set of tyres, and he's very, very lucky that he didn't hit anything, because the Porsche and GT Pro on Thursday night, we talked about that, and it went in heavily in a left front puncture there on the 38, the Jackie Chan DC racing car. There's a lot of punctures at the moment, very early on in the race for this.
All of a sudden, yeah.
Yeah, punctures breed punctures, don't they? Because they throw off bits of wire, bits of steel, bits of carbon, debris goes everywhere.
It's a long way. It's before Mullen as well, so he's less than halfway round the lap.
By the way, the number 11 car has just gone back out of the pit lane, so Jenson Button and family and friends and fans can take a little bit of sucker from that. It is moving once more, the SMP Racing Dallara. That's a very long way to come back. That is 10,000 and more baguettes distance back to the pits from there.
It's because everything's measured in baguettes here in France.
Absolutely.
And the circuit's 20,835 baguette lengths. An average baguette is 65 centimetres long.
Right. So my quick maths makes that 20,970 baguettes long.
Could be.
That's because I read the stat over your shoulder and wrote it down.
Thank you.
Right, before Alan throws the dollies out, Lou, who's got the dollies out?
The Corvette team for the 64, that's Marcel Fester's car. We've got the dollies out.
Okay, dollies out at Corvette. In comes the number 8 Toyota. The race leader has now completed 30 laps as he crosses the stripe. So Sebastian Buemi is in. Mike Conway continues, stopping a lap later. Now, that will be because they stopped the number 8 car a lap earlier, right at the beginning of the race, and so there's that stagger all the way through.
Well, it's all the way through until, you know, it is all the way through at the moment, because they're restricted on the number of maximum laps to 11 that the LMP1 hybrids can run. But at the same time, you can also, with a full course yellow or a slow zones or something like that, it can evolve a little bit. The reason you split it is that you just don't, on the first lap of a 24-hour, first stint I should say, of a 24-hour race, have your two cars getting close to each other. Because even though it's a very long pit lane, your actual pit area, because these cars are very, very long, so the nose of one would be up to the back of the other. And it would only be if they were in number order for the garage and number order on the tracks that they would just drive in together and off together, where you wouldn't lose time, but you still compromise each other. So in general, the car that's leading has priority. It goes as long as possible, and the other one basically has to come in a lap early.
Slow zone between Mulsanne corner and Indianapolis. So they'll be slowing down to 80 kilometers an hour by the time they get to Mulsanne. By the way, on his in-lap, Sebastian Buemi went purple in sector 1 and 2.
Reason is that you've got the hybrid boost, and then you just boost every little bit of energy out of it, because you don't actually have to finish the lap in the same way as you do. So you've got an amount of energy that you're allowed to use per lap, but on the in-lap that's slightly different, so therefore you just dump every little bit of hybrid energy to make sure that you get the maximum lap time. And where do you do that here? You do it in sector 2, which is all the way down the big straights, and then sector 3, which is coming back in towards the pit lane. Looking there at the slow zone all the way through to Indianapolis, and everybody on the 80-kilometre-hour speed limiter. Now, we all know that when you're on a motorway following a group of trucks that are limited to 56 miles an hour, or whatever that is in kilometres, 90 Ks, their limiters aren't exactly the same. One's always going fractionally slower than the other, and after 12 miles will eventually overhaul the truck in front, and then everybody else can get on with their life. But here, you can't have that variance. It has got to be very, very close to perfection. Yeah, but you do have a variance, because some teams are able to invest a little bit more money than others into making it perfect. And if I'm sitting for one lap around this long 13.626 kilometre or 20,960 baguette length of track, that's the Open Tongues car still coming back to the pits, the puncture that he had, and we saw him at Mullen a long time ago. And here in the background you've got the Porsche that went off at Indianapolis. Yeah, that was Wainwright, wasn't it? Yeah, they all look like they're still in the slow zone, don't they? And he's got a puncture at the rear, so he's dragging the rear body on the floor, or the underfloor, and he's trailing oil, in fact. And there's the, I wouldn't mind betting that's the number 11 car going slowly behind, that's just left the pits. Because Stefan Sarazan is still third in the number 17 car, and if he was going that slowly, Thomas Laurent might well have passed him by now. Yeah, very true. There's quite a few cars going slowly there. It looks like Wainwright did hit the barrier with the Porsche when he went in at Indianapolis, because they're having to repair the barrier there. And so there has been some damage, and that will take a little bit of time, but they'll put the slow zone out only in that area. Number 11 is going very slowly through the Porsche curve, so that is that SMP Racing Dallara. And so the United Autosport car is going to use this time to make a pit stop, because the truck's obviously slower than it would be, so maybe it could be coming in slightly early just to make sure it gets through quicker than it would normally. The problem is, if you're out on track now and don't stop, your green, as it were, lap will be much, much slower than anybody else who's stopped and goes back out. Exactly, So the people that are within a couple of laps of their stop are best to stop now, because there's so much time to be wasted on track with these slow zones. Well, you're going to lose a couple of minutes in that slow zone alone, so you really have to make sure you, even if you're only 3 or 4 laps in, top up, you've got another full green lap stint. You know, it's get the fuel, keep the track position, don't lose time if you can afford not to. This is something that the engineers and the technicians on the team will think about a lot, and there will be a point where it's worthwhile and when it's not worthwhile. I think when you're in a fight like this, I don't expect any of them to come in. I agree, because track position is critical here, and they're all in the same boat, aren't they? They'll all be going just as slowly in the slow bit and just as quickly-ish in the quick bit. 92, the Porsche of Lawrence that's 93, the Porsche, not Lawrence Ventura, 92. So this is Nick Tandy. Last time a current Grand Prix driver rocked up to Le Mans on his weekend off, he won it with Nick Tandy alongside him. Now Fernando Alonso, I'm sure, will be very, very pleased if he can repeat that Hulkenberg thing. Into the pits comes the Gulf Porsche, just in the background. Eagle eye, Alan McNish spots that, but the 93 car of Nick Tandy being chased by the Ford. This is 6th, 7th and 8th, that battle that we're seeing in the background there in GTE Pro. Just up ahead of it, the BMW popping through, that's in 5th place with Felix Antonio, Felix da Costa. Tony Kanaan, Indy 500 winner, and also the IndyCar previous champion is in that Ford. This is his first time at this place, and I spoke to him this morning. He said, my God, this is quick. Now, he's driven at an average of 230 miles an hour round about the Indy 500, and he said this place is quick. It is. I mean, you know, the first timers, they've had all the practice and everything else. They've done the simulations. They've done driver's parade, which is a bit of mania. There is Mike Wainwright. Yeah, he just clipped the barrier. You know, it's enough to lift the car up in the air, and that's not easy. And then stuffed the front as well for good measure. Yeah, the front doesn't look too damaged, considering he's gone into the tyre wall, which is absorbed. That they will have to check things in there, but it's the back that's going to be the bigger issue.
Yeah. These Porsches, as the evolutions come through in the 991, they've made them a lot stronger than the 997. So you were always braking the front, the radiator at the front, but now they're a little bit more bulletproof. So as the evolution of the cars come on, it's just it's a better car all round.
Yeah, Sebastian Bourdais, we're on board with him there in second place. Second and third right behind him, Frank Machiavecchi. And coming down into Mulsanne, Bourdais having to defend on the inside. Machiavecchi going round the outside, yellow flag, slow zone area, can't get it done there. Bourdais knew that was coming up, and so therefore it was just a case of sitting and waiting, because there was no way that anything could have happened in that area.
The Dallara having to pull back in there, as well as Alex Brundle trying to get part by Paul Lafargue in the LMP2 IDEX Sport car in front of him. Those Dallaras easy to spot, the Ginettas easy to spot with their chrome blue livery.
So the important thing here from the driver's point of view is that you're in the right gear for a start, and you're watching for that green flag, because too many times, even it's happened to me, I've been in the wrong gear, I've been in second rather than first, or third rather than second, and you drop your limiter and you find you don't have the boost that you thought you had, and the cars are all over you from behind. So you've really got to time it right and keep your concentration during these, because it's easy just to switch off and go, we're only doing 80k, it's just a gentle cruise. So you really got to keep the focus on what's coming up.
Frank Walliser was telling the story about how they ended up with those historic liveries on the two Porsches, and it was in a motorsport meeting late last autumn when they were talking about what might they do for the 70th anniversary of Porsche, and they said, well, let's choose some historic liveries, and then they said, okay, well, we'll do that. When is the 70th birthday, by the way? Oh, it's the Le Mans weekend. Well, so that was the decision made. So we're now going to race at Le Mans with historic liveries. And so all they had to do then was choose two of their favourites. And so they've come up with that Group C era and the Pink Pig.
So I think Louise is talking about the United Autosport car in the pits working on some problems. Yeah,
it's got a sensor issue. Apparently at the moment that United Autosport car's got a fellow countryman of ours in the wheel of it, Mr. Paul Di Resta, but
of course, yes,
unfortunately not going quite as well.
Is this Paul's first Le Mans?
Yes, yeah. Yes.
It's not Johnny Adams' first. He won last year, but the car that he shares with Darren Turner is down in 14th place in the GTE Pro class. So another Scot, but not having a really good run of it either. On board the 91 car, this is Fred Machiavecchi. Sebastian Bourdais right in front, the man born and bred in Le Mans, former race winner, of course. He was the man who won on Ford's return 50 years after the first GT4 victory, a GT40 victory a couple of years ago. And through carves Alex Brundle, he disposed of the IDEX Sport LMP3 car pretty quickly, and he goes past that battle.
Oh, Jimmy Bruni's touched in the inside. Oh, that was not, to be honest with you, I don't think that was really on Jimmy, because he was trying to follow the Ford through as quickly as possible, but the Ferrari basically had to turn into the corner at some point, and so a bit of side-to-side touching there. Not too much damage, but there was more risk than you would necessarily want.
Yeah, at this stage of the race.
At any stage of the race, because that could quite easily, Peter, have been a front nose or a puncture or something like that coming from it.
Yeah, and he will know that Ferrari is not crewed by a regular crew. So Ishikawa, who had just come out of the pits, being dive bombed by the Porsche in the place where there definitely wasn't room for two cars.
You have to have a lot of awareness of the car around and about you if that is ever going to happen, and that certainly wasn't the case. The Ferrari was trying to make its way through there. It was an AM car, and it was always a big risk. But you can see that he's already dropped back quite a bit from the Ford because of the time loss, because the Ford was able to get it done earlier in the corner, and that's what he didn't want to happen.
And we've still got this slow zone down at Indianapolis, or on the way from Mulsanne corner all the way to Indianapolis, while they tidy up the barrier damage at Indy. Blue flags waving as the P2 cars, the P1 cars carve their way through the field. There's the Colles by Collet's number 4 LMP1 car. And that car recovering after its early problems.
You get a good view of that first chicane there on the exit and how wide he's going. I don't remember ever going quite as wide as that and over that curb like they're doing now. Is that the line you were taking?
No, but we had 1,000 horsepower of boost, so we were trying to get it lined up to go as straight as possible. But no, I think it's a case of the grips out there now, because they've actually they've resurfaced it a little bit, so you can get there a little bit more than you could before.
I think it's slightly changed the line, and you know, you're seeing the cars running wider there than the last time.
And the other thing is that the curbs are a little bit lower and a little bit less aggressive. Yeah, we couldn't use the curbs before.
Let's get down to the pit lane and hear from Louise Beckett. She's caught up with Felipe Albuquerque, fresh out of the car at United Autosports.
Yes, fresh out of the car you are. We've seen that there's a sensor issue that the team have worked at in the pit lane.
Yes.
So what was the problem? What sensor?
Well, I was just behind the GT, and in the front we have the GPS sensor for the FIA, and out of nothing it just flew off. It's the first time that it ever happened, and the mechanic was just telling me, are you sure that you didn't hit nothing? Because I just glued that part before we go. And yeah, it was very hard because it were at 300 and it just something flew off. So they had to put on, go with the cable through the cockpits and fix it. And we lost 27 seconds with that. Oh, well, let's hope that it was the only incident that we had. But yeah, it's still long.
Other than that, how was your stint?
Well, the first one was very interesting with going for after Tete Rouge. It's like 6-7 cars all getting slipstream one another, and it was pretty cool that. But after that was pretty steady behind the Aurecas and a little bit fight with the Lara Michelin. We are okay. We just got a little bit traffic on the wrong places in the last stint, but we can be better than where we are now, so we will recover places for sure.
We've got a long time to go. When are you due back in?
So I think this was our only 3rd stint. So now, from now on, it's 4 stints every time. So we're going to increase the driving time per driver.
Aside from that, did you watch the football last night?
Yes, actually I did. And today I need to be a Ronaldo for the team and to put the car on the top.
Thank you.
Yeah, 3-3 Spain-Portugal, and Felipe Albuquerque quite avid and very passionate, I've got to be honest with you. I think most Portuguese were very passionate, and a few Spaniards in this paddock as well.
Yeah, I'm sure Fernando Alonso would have been watching the match with equal alacrity. Of course, a man who's aiming to try and do the Triple Crown, Formula 1 World Champion, Le Mans winner, Monaco Grand Prix winner, Indy 500 winner, quadruple crown maybe. So is Jenson Button. Drive-through penalty for the number 44 car, which was Tracy Krohn at the wheel. He's just handed it over to Nick Johnson. So Tracy has picked up the penalty for constant abuse of track limits, passes it down the line to Nick Johnson. Right, son, you serve that penalty for me. Thanks very much indeed. That's a teammate, isn't it? Yeah.
Now, we're not seeing so much of that car, have we? But yeah. He must have really been abusing the track limits, because we've seen some of the GT cars go very, very wide.
What we've also not, well, he'll have been warned in the car and still abused the limits, and that's what's offended Eduardo. What we didn't see, because it happened in the pit lane, is that Mike Conway has retaken the lead of the race from Sebastian Buemi by going not 1, but 2 laps further.
We were out, Peter and I, at the start of the race, just entry to the Ford chicane. And it was very, very evident that there was different energy usage going on. When I say energy, I don't mean the hybrid, I mean the fuel as well, in the lift-off process. And so they've got a different mentality the way they're going around the beginning of this race between the 2 Toyotas. Now, I'm very sure that Pascal Vasselon, who looks over the technical department of both cars, will know what's going on, but he's allowing both of the teams to try different things to see where they can get to. It's not as if they've got a real drama from anybody right behind them, because Thomas Laurent is 3 minutes behind and he's in 3rd place.
But even if they did, even if they were in a battle with Audi and Porsche or Bentley or BMW or anybody else in prototypes with hybrids in the same class, you know, when you came into a race as Audi, did you never slightly split the way that the cars were working? Because if everybody's got the same solution, and it's not right.
Only if there was a definite feeling for one or the other, and this is a bigger factor for him, because you can see the traffic here threading to the left, and switch cameras there just at the moment where the Toyota was going to have to make a decision what he did. But now the Porsche has made the decision, pull out the slipstream, and he's on the outside of the Ford coming down towards the second chicane. Needs to get it done here, because if he can't get it done, then there's a slow zone coming up ahead in towards Mulsanne, but it looks like he has.
I watched the start from in the TV production gallery, and I've got a little bit of video that I'm going to post. The Porsche Fred Makovici moves up ahead of Sebastian Bourdais into second in the class.
That's Porsche 1-2 now.